You're listening to Awards Magnet, a Gold Derby podcast. Subscribe weekly for new episodes during Emmys and Oscar season, interviews with top awards contenders, and special monthly mailbag episodes. Email us at slugfests@goldderby.com. Now, on to the show. Welcome back to Awards Magnet. Christopher Rosen. I'm joined by Joyce. And Joyce, the Last of Us episode we've been teasing and waiting for finally happened this week.
For 2.5 years.
So, spoiler alert for The Last of Us. I guess if you're listening or watching and you haven't watched it yet, we're just going to talk freely about this. The spoiler alert, I'd say, is like the statute of limitations is over. But I'll just say that because, there's always one person who's going to be like, I didn't know that was going to happen. Bruce Willis was dead the whole time. I can't believe it. And now I'm going to get a comment about that.
Why are you listening to this if you haven't watched?
So Joel dies, Pedro Pascal.
R.I.P.
And we knew that was going to happen from the beginning of the show because, like, if you know the games, even if you're not a gamer, you could look at this and talk about it and read a million articles about it, that was where the show was headed. And the second season, we were waiting to figure out where Joel died based on, like, how it'll be. It's a 7-episode season. They're going to split the second game up. It's a very long game. I think it's over 20 hours of gameplay. And so, like, where's it going to be? Well, it was the second episode. They killed Joel off right away in the game. I think it's in the first hour, so that makes sense.
Yeah, I think once we found out, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, that they were going to split the game into multiple seasons. Like, where was this stuff going to land? I think some people thought maybe it'll be at the end of the season, right?
Maybe they would have changed certain things.
Yeah, like we will have a full season of Pedro Pascal, but no.
So he's gone. And this third episode coming up is the first one in the post-Joel world for The Last of Us. I've seen up to 6, Joyce. There's 7 episodes.
I know you have.
And so what I can say is, and it's not a spoiler because I think they've talked about this and it's been in the marketing, especially in hindsight, if you look at the trailers. Pedro's coming back. He's in a flashback episode towards the end of the 6 screeners.
Yes, that is already out there. So not a spoiler. And like Craig Mazin has also talked about how, after the second episode, like there'll still be more Joel. But the way he's talked about it makes it sound like he'll be in every episode, which is not the case. It's like there's just like a main flashback episode.
So there's a main flashback episode, and then I'll just say there's another opportunity for him to show up as well.
Which would also mean 4 episode appearances. And like it's a moot point, as my friend Joey Tribbiani would say, because he would have never been able to go guest. Correct. Because he's already been nominated and lead for this show. And
that's a new rule, Joyce. Explain the rule.
A new rule for 2025. They tweaked the guest rule. So the main rule remains the same. You can you're eligible for guest if you appear in 50 or less than 50% of the season. If you're 50 or above, you have to go supporting or lead. There are no requirements for supporting or lead. You just can't be a guest if you're in half the season. So the new rule says that if you've been nominated or have won in lead or supporting before, and you can't go to guest for playing the same role in the same show in a future year. It's Correct. The Claire Foy rule.
Yes.
So as we know, Pedro has already been nominated in lead for this show. So even if he were in less than 50% of season 2, he cannot go guest.
And there's been reporting, like I would say light reporting in quotes or written very lightly in pencil, that he's considering either lead or supporting. No kidding. And I think he's leaning towards supporting based on this reporting, or we don't know what he's thinking, but that's the idea. And I would say, he's leaning towards lead based on the reporting. And I think he would be in lead no matter what, basically. He's still the lead of the show. He was the lead in the first episode. He's basically leading the second episode, or co-lead, because he's obviously with Bella Ramsey. And in the flashback episode, it's a major Pedro episode. And so I'm like, that's 3 lead episodes, basically. So I don't see why he would go supporting.
Just pull a Brian Cox.
It does feel exactly like Brian Cox from a few years ago at Succession, who you'll recall died early in the season, showed up a couple of times in an emotional flashback.
In an episode directed by Mark Mylod.
Yes.
Just like Pedro. So
yes.
And that was the year that Pedro was nominated, So but it's like, it's, that this type of category fraud is not as fraught in the Emmy world as it is in the Oscar world. like 2 years ago, some people were kind of annoyed at Brian not moving down to supporting, or even guest when people thought like, he wouldn't be in 5 episodes back then. But I think that was more out of like, oh, we want him out of there just to make room for another one of our faves to make it into lead.
Yeah. I also don't feel like it feels to me, I'm thinking of this on the fly, Joyce, which is dangerous, but having just discussing it with you as part of this conversation, it feels to me like the spirit is that he's still like Joel is a lead character.
Yeah.
And so while he's not in half of these episodes, he remains like he is the driving figure in the story, even not there, because the next episodes here, no spoilers, but they're airing this weekend, and you kind of can guess based on like the trailers and if you played the game, it's really about Ellie now, coming to terms with Joel's death and then seeking revenge for Joel's death, which she says in the second episode.
Yeah, she literally says.
Right. So I'm like, it is still like he's like the driving force of the show. So he's not a supporting character, even not in the show, I guess I would say. So I feel like it will be a lead.
Which is like the same thing you could say about Logan after he died,
correct. Right? Exactly right. He was never a supporting character on the show. Yeah. So why would he be a supporting character after his death?
Like who was going to succeed him. Correct. And they're still talking about him even in death.
Correct.
And all that he left behind.
We'll see if he, based on the game, if you know the game, like there are opportunities for more flashbacks later in the show. In the show, as the season goes, in future seasons, maybe in that capacity, if they do that, he could be campaigned as a supporting actor, right? Because he's not in it. You know what I mean? Like if he just shows up in season 4 or season 3 for like a flashback, maybe he's still not a lead. But this season, I think he could qualify as a lead and should. The other Last of Us wrinkles were all about the other characters, basically, right, Joyce, in terms of where they're going to go. Kaitlyn Dever, people really responding so far to her great performance as Abby, a polarizing figure in the game. Big part of the first 2 episodes, Joyce. But then we also saw, again, reporting this week that she will be either able to campaign as a guest.
She's guest eligible.
She's guest eligible.
So she's only going to be in one more episode. And if you're familiar with the game or just read up on it, you could kind of figure out when she'll probably show up again.
I'll say this, Joyce. I've seen 6 episodes.
Yes.
I can confirm that she is guest eligible because she's already been in 2. And that would mean she'd have to be in only one more episode.
Uh-huh.
And so I can confirm that she is only going to be in one more episode, if that, based on what's going on.
Yeah. So guest eligible, but she doesn't have to go guest.
She could go supporting. Yes.
So
similarly, in the same boat, Jeffrey Wright, who is guest eligible, but could also go supporting, based on what I've seen in the 6 episodes.
Yeah, and he's reprising his role from the game.
Yes.
So it's funny, like this year with Last of Us, because season 1 they had no supporting contenders. It was a 2-hander with Pedro and Bella, and then they just had a bunch of guest stars every episode. And obviously those, again, guest stars, or if you're guest eligible, you can go supporting. But in season 1, it wouldn't really make sense for any of those people to go supporting,
Right.
Whereas in season 2, it's more refined, the cast. There are actual supporting characters who we even haven't mentioned yet, like Gabriel Luna, the young Lizino, and Isabela Merced. But I think, like going in before the season premiered, I think everyone assumed like Abby would be a huge part of season 2, like definitely supporting. But the way they've broken out the story in these 7 episodes, like she's guest eligible, but like Abby is such a big presence, like in the game and the lore, and presumably in season 3, if you know what's going to happen, that you can make the argument that like she could go supporting just to kind of like set up what that character is going to be, because it's kind of like similar to what Allison Janney is or might be doing, because she's also guest eligible for The Diplomat because she was only in 2 of 6 episodes, but she could go supporting. She got nominated at SAG in their one category for 2 episodes, and she's going to be a major part in season 3.
Correct. You mentioned the supporting actors who are supporting actors, and I think if Kaitlyn Dever does go supporting, then The Last of Us could actually get 2 of those spots, because I'm like way in on Isabela Merced. She is so great as Dina. The reviews, if you'll recall, Joyce, before the season were like, man, breakout. She's so great. And having seen episodes 3 through 6 now, beyond 1 and 2, I can also confirm that she is so great, Joyce. It's subjective, but I would say it's a confirmation of whatever the review said. She's fantastic. She has so much to do. Great stuff with Bella Ramsey. And I would really, actually, at this point, be surprised if she doesn't get in, I think. I'm like full on like,
did you put her in first?
I didn't put her in first. I don't think she's going to win, but I do have her in my supporting actress category. We could go through this when we're done talking about Last of Us, but I did make some broad updates, Joyce, of these categories. But I thought Isabela Merced is great. I was also like, Storm Reid won an Emmy as a guest actor for season 1 for basically playing Ellie's girlfriend. And in season 2, Isabela Merced gets to play Ellie's girlfriend for multiple episodes. And so I was like, I don't think that's a bad way to get an Emmy nomination. So I don't know if she'll win, but I do think she'll get in for this character, because I think she's like a real standout in these upcoming episodes.
Who, if Kaitlyn goes supporting and they both get in, who do you think is stronger?
I still think Isabella is stronger. I'll say this. I don't know if she can win, because we talked about there's a lot of White Lotus actresses who I think are really strong, but I think Isabella would have the slight edge, because I think, it comes down to like she's an incredibly empathetic and likable character, and like that is always like a better bet than being Abby, who I think is very complicated and nuanced, and Kaitlyn Dever really does. I think that the challenge of the second season of The Last of Us versus the game, like in the game they talked about this, you play as Abby. I don't play video games, Joyce, but I read on this. So you're playing as Abby in the beginning of the game, and then you go and kill Joel.
It's a shock.
And then you go and kill Joel. So you're being forced by the game to empathize with a character who you should hate because they're killing the lead character from the first game that you played as. And so the trick of the show was to figure out a way to get the audience to empathize with Abby a little bit, or at least understand her complexities before killing Joel. And I thought they did a really good job of that with the writing and her performance especially, because I don't think you really hate her as a character, and you understand like where she's coming from. And even if she's monologuing a little bit when she's going to kill Joel, it still works. So I was like, I do think that's a really good performance, but I just think you actually do really like Dina, the character Isabela Merced plays. Like, she's, of all the characters that they've brought on, like, she's one where I was like, when I'm watching the episodes, and again, I know what happens from reading about the game, but I'm like, you're nervous for her. You don't want anything bad to happen to her because she's like such a good character. And so it's like, I think it's like a really good performance because of that.
Yeah, no, I agree, because like, we've talked about this for years, and just like the quote unlikable woman problem that afflicts actresses, that we've talked about before with like Laura Linney and Ozark, and like Sarah Snook pre season 4 of Succession, where it's just like, if they're like ruthless or a little bit cold, it's more difficult for them to get the win. And like the way they introduced Abby in the show was necessary, right? To get you to empathize with her and understand where she's coming from. Introducing her in the premiere, although I do think like that may have bumped some people, because it is like a completely new character, and it's been, over 2 years since the show was last on the air. So I think if you're like a casual viewer, you might just be like, who is she? Like, was she in season 1? And then I don't know if like, because like the death is so early in the show, and then, like she doesn't come back for several episodes too. I don't know if that's also an issue, where it's like, it was so concentrated in the beginning, and then like you said, she monologues her intentions because we need to understand.
And that's different from the game too.
Yeah.
She doesn't do that in the game. Yeah. The character.
Yeah. So, and it's like all of that is, so upfront in the beginning, and we have this massive game-changing event for the show, and then you don't see her again for a while.
Correct.
Whereas like we do see Dina consistently.
Yeah, Dina is really great.
And they're on a revenge tour.
Yes.
So,
and then in the supporting actor, I mean, I thought Gabriel Luna is really good on the show. Tommy's great character, And I do think Young Mazzino could pop too as Jesse, who I think is another fan favorite character, and he's very good in the coming episodes as well. Though probably, I mean, I don't know. It's not, like they're all in it, but not as much as maybe, you know what I mean? Like, he's in it a bunch of episodes, but not as much maybe as you're thinking. Not as much as Dina, at least. I mean, Dina becomes like, Dina and Ellie replaces basically Joel and Ellie. And like the first season was about them going, you know, it's like a journey. And now you have Dina with Ellie instead of Joel. So she's just in it more. It's been, I like having watched this 6 episodes, I was like, I think it's really great. I don't know. It's not typically a show I would love. And I was like, I'm hiding my eyes most of the time because I hate watching people get killed and be injured. But yeah, I thought they handled the Joel thing is such a big swing. And obviously like, for years we've been like at least thinking about how they're going to pull it off. The response has been pretty solid, I would say. I mean, like on like IMDb is fake, but like, or like the scores are, you know what I mean? But like people, like it didn't get like review bombed really, at least on IMDb.
And I think people were expecting that because of the toxicity around Abby in the game. And I think a lot of like, if you knew what was going to happen, I think a lot of people were bracing themselves as like, oh, like protect Kaitlyn Dever. You know, and like people are you going to be mad about Joel dying? And then they're going to, you know, have their pitchforks out for Kaitlyn and Abby and everything. And that didn't really happen. I think a lot of it was just like, you know, obviously devastation over the death, but, you know, a praise for the episode itself and the acting and like for Kaitlyn too. You know, obviously there's always going to be haters, but I think that was actually the minority. It was not like the incel response that a lot of people were anticipating.
Correct. And even like my wife had no idea for 2 years. So we were joking about this. She had no idea. She never even like Googled it. She was like, and she loves Pedro Pascal. She loves Joel. And I had to sit here and every time she's like, oh, I can't wait for Last of Us to come back. I love Pedro. And this and that. And then I'm like,
how did you keep this from her?
I just didn't say anything. And then during the show, she's like, are they really going to kill him? And I was like, and then they did. And she's like, fuck this. And then we watched all the screeners and she was still in. So I think people are not going to like throw the show away. I think they're going to be, I'll be curious to see. This weekend's episode is episode 3. It is much more mournful and slower paced than this incredible second episode, which not just the Joel death, but you had this incredible like action sequence that people compare to like something you would see in Game of Thrones that Mark Mylod directed for this show. That was like a really great episode, I think, like just in terms of like every aspect of it. So this third episode is much slower. Obviously, it's like, you know, coming to terms with Joel, the death, and, you know, figuring out what figuring out what Ellie wants to do in response. And so that's kind of like this episode. And if you've seen like the picture, like I think in the it's like, you know, she's going to visit Joel's grave, right? Like stuff like that.
They've released those photos.
Right. So it's like, that's kind of like what you're expecting. And then from there, it starts picking up again with like the thriller aspects of it in 4 and 5, before 6 is a different kind of thing. And then we'll see what happens in the finale, which they haven't set. So I'll be curious to see the response to this episode. I think if they like the characters, you would like the show. But if you're watching the show because you want to see like a bunch of zombie guys get like blown up or like all this action stuff, you might find it a little slow.
I don't think that's how most people watch it. Like, it's not The Walking Dead.
Right.
You know?
And that's what I think makes it really good. So I was like, why don't we do some updated predictions, Joyce? Which I know you don't really update, but do you want to update on the fly?
Always. I always update on the fly. I haven't touched these in like 2 weeks.
Okay. So for series, still have the top 8. We didn't, which in the top 8 in the odds, I'll read my picks, but it doesn't matter. I have Last of Us in first. I have The Pitt, Joyce, in second. Our favorite show, The Pitt.
I mean, you should tell the people that you finally watched The Pitt too.
I finally watched The Pitt, Joyce. It's one of the best shows I've watched in so long. I think it's like the best show.
Join the club. Come inside The Pitt.
I don't like jumping on bandwagons. I absolutely loved it. I was in tears multiple episodes, just full on tears. Like, I mean, weeping.
Remember when you asked me like way back, because I had tweeted that I already had like 3 favorite shows of 2025.
Yes.
And you asked me what they were, and like one of them was The Pitt. And I told you to watch it. I said like you would cry, because at that point I had 10 screeners, so I watched the 10. Obviously,
you were correct. As it turns out,
you cry at like everything. But
I gotta say, like it is fantastic. Like the amount of coming. I'm not going to like sit here and mansplain the Pitt to people who watch the Pitt for weeks as a latecomer to finally catching up with the whole season. But the thing I found absolutely fantastic about the show, and it's a testament to the writing, the directing, the editing, every craft, the acting, is that you meet these characters and within 10 seconds, no matter whether they're a patient or a new doctor or a nurse or somebody coming in, you're in.
You're just like, I've known you for 5 years.
You're in for life. You are absolutely riveted by their case and their issue, and you hope to God that they make it out okay. It is like, I've never seen a show be able to pull this off at this level. Like, there was not one case or action where I was like, I don't give a fuck about this.
Right.
Like it was unbelievable.
There's like 5 instances an episode where it just like devastates you, and it's like always it's like it's a new case, it's a new patient, but you're always in. And then like you're saying, like, the way they introduce characters is flawless, and you're just immediately invested. The entire night shift with the mass casualty, they all come in, and you're just like, they all make sense, they all fit in, and you feel like you've been watching them for years.
The other thing that gets me, these are things that make me cry in anything. Kindness, people showing kindness. Weigh in on that. Love that. Being nice to people, even in fraught situations, which I think this show has in leaps and bounds. Like, it is like they're really trying. Everybody's trying. I find that really compelling.
It's nice to see people be good at what they do and also trying to do good.
Yes. That's that. It just is top to bottom. I think it's like the best show. So I have it in second. I really wanted to put it in first, though. That was basically that was the long tangent here, is to say, I really do think the Pitt could win drama series, but I'll keep Last of Us in first for now.
But you had The White Lotus in first.
I did.
So you put Last of Us after watching these 6 episodes.
Yes. Because I think The Last of Us, to me, I was like, the Joel episode landed so well that I think it's like really big. And having seen the rest of the other next 4 episodes, there's nothing in there that makes me think that it'll take a step back. And I think people will really, I guess if you're not invested, if I'm overestimating how people will feel about Dina and Ellie, then perhaps it will not be as widely embraced. But I think you will find, like, they do, that relationship becomes really strong and paramount. And then by the time you get to the flashback episode where Pedro comes back, it feels like it's just a great show. So I think the scale of it remains tough to beat. But I think the Pitt will have, it's definitely the emotional show, and it's definitely the enthusiasm show, and it's definitely the organic show, and it's definitely the TV show. And we saw last year with Hacks, where Hacks beat The Bear for a lot of reasons, but I think one of the main reasons was that it's a comedy series, and at the root of it, it's still a funny show that's a comedy. And the Pitt is kind of the same thing, I feel like, in this category, because it's super high production, and like I said, like, all these things are great, but at the heart of it, it's just a TV show. And like The Last of Us is a great show, but it's a peak TV show, you know what I mean, or like a prestige TV show. And the Pitt is just a TV show, which is not a pejorative. I think it's like the feature of the show is that it's just a good TV show.
I think like the Pitt is also prestige, but it's found, like, it's solved how to marry prestige and procedural.
Yes, and
which
so I think that's
no one
kind of
else
like
has done.
Like, I kind of feel like Hacks does that with comedy, right? Where it's like a prestige show that is also just a comedy show.
Yeah, it's also like, imagine if Max wins both drama.
So that was the reason I was like, can it actually do that? I mean, so anyway, long story short, I have Last of Us in first. I have Hacks in second. I have Last of Us first. I have the Pitt in second, and then I have Severance in third, and the White Lotus in fourth. Wow,
you dropped White Lotus from 1 to 4. You were like so hard on White Lotus.
I did. Just people, the response was not what you want. It was suboptimal. So I don't know.
You still had it in first after the finale.
I did, but it had never stopped.
Now you've seen the Pitt and almost all of Last of Us.
And I just think of all these shows, like, if you're ranking these 4 shows, and again, online response is what it is, but like the White Lotus had the most issues with online response, I would say, so far.
It's interesting because it's had its best ratings of all 3 seasons so far, right?
Which actually maybe explains why it's had such a tough response, because I think like
more people are watching it, so more opinions,
and more people who shouldn't be watching it are watching it.
Mm-hmm. And then I think also, like, I mean, I don't know if it's like buzz, but just like the conversation around like, oh, like some like in the incest and everything that's going to happen, like anticipation. I think there's like just curiosity factor, and that it's not like necessarily like a fan watching. You just kind of want to be part of the conversation, and you have FOMO or something. Yeah, like it's definitely the most divisive of the four you just mentioned.
That's why I put it in fourth.
And I think, obviously, Last of Us is not over yet this season, so TBD. But I don't know if people would have as many issues with the season as they would they have with The White Lotus.
The biggest issue, the hurdle was going to be Joel's death.
Yeah.
And they cleared that hurdle. And like I said, your mileage may vary on these upcoming episodes, but there's enough thrills and stuff that I think you're into it. And you're kind of like want to see this journey carry through. So that was part of it too. So I have those four. I have the chalk 8. I mean, I have Slow Horses, The Diplomat, Andor, which is back better than ever, according to Critics' Choice. Loving this season.
It has like the highest score in Metacritic of all the shows.
So I think, obviously it was always in.
Always in.
I've moved it up a little bit. And then I have Squid Game in my 8th spot just because of the scale. And while I'm waiting for like some of these other shows to pop, they have not popped. So that's what I got. I have the same 8. But now I have Last of Us winning with the Pitt in second.
I mean, that's always been my 8. So I, as you know, have always had Last of Us in first.
I know.
Should I keep it there?
Why not?
I don't know. I mean, I could put the Pitt in first, but like I don't like putting my fave in first.
I would not put it in first yet, but I do think after the nominations, it becomes a question. I think there's places where it will get nominated or could get nominated, and then we're going to be like, this is a really strong show. And I do think the enthusiasm is real. And I think it's
absolutely real. Like it's not
people
just
love it.
It's not just regular people. Like I have had people in the industry,
yes,
from all over, like unsolicited,
yes,
tell me how much they love the show.
Yeah.
I talked to the Abbott Elementary showrunners,
yes,
last week, and I asked them, obviously they did the Sunny crossover. I was like, so if you get crossover on their show next, what would it be? And they said the Pitt. They shoot next to each other. So I was like, you got to make it happen. But they're obsessed with it. The first time I knew that people were watching the show was at the SAG Awards on the red carpet, because they were interviewing Quinta Brunson and Brett Goldstein, and then Kristen Miller comes up and they start talking about shows they were watching, and Kristen was like, you guys got to watch The Pitt. It's the best show. And Quinta was like, we shoot next to each other. They're covered in blood all the time.
The other thing is, like, when we're doing this, it's not a perfect science, obviously, but like I said, this is the show of all these nominees, and your mileage may vary again on some of these, and I'm sure people have emotional responses to all these other shows in different ways, but nothing like The Pitt. I just feel like it is a complete.
It's just passion. Yeah,
there's a passion there, and you're watching it, and you're connected, and you're feeling something, and I think that's going to help push it over the top too. Yeah, I think there's a lot. I really do think it's like. I really do think it could win. I'll have it at second for now, but I mean, I don't think the visibility is a problem. I don't think it's like this is a show that has broken through, and I think it's only going to get stronger, because I think you're going to have schmucks like me who didn't even watch it in the early run be like, "Oh my god, I just watched it. You got to watch it." Like when people ask me on the street, Joyce, or in my town here, what are you watching? I'm like, The Pitt is it. I'm like, that's one you got to watch. I recommend it to anyone.
Like, I mean, It's also like a lot of people have seen it already, and that's the show they're recommending.
So I think in the end, all of these things conspire to maybe make it win. But for now, I'll keep The Last of Us in first, just because I think of all these shows, like you kind of say, it's clearly getting nominated. And I think it could lead in nominations. You know what I mean? Like it could have the most nominations of any drama series based on how the season is.
Yeah. I mean, as I've said before, I had Last of Us in first just based on its track record. Obviously just only one season before, but it did so well last time, 8 wins, including 2 acting and guest, but still, and it felt like the happy medium of like the big 3 previously. It was that and White Lotus and Severance, but I'll put The Pitt in second too, because again, I don't want to have my fave in first, even though I believe it could win.
For drama, what do you got, Joyce? You have the same 8. We talked about this. There's nothing else to say.
The only thing I would consider dropping is Squid Game,
See,
But I just don't know what else to put there. And
we're waiting for Paradise, I feel like, to pop, but it hasn't really, beyond like being a good show that people liked, but I don't think it'll be there. I don't know. It could be any of these. I mean, if any of these snuck in, like all these 100-to-1 shows, like Godspeed.
It is really funny because like everything like everything is 100-to-1.
Paradise is 25-to-1 in our odds. Handmaid's Tale is 50-to-1. I mean, they could just revert back to that, but if they're going to revert back to that, why wouldn't they just go to Squid Game?
And The Handmaid's just completely bombed last time.
So I'm going to stick with that 8. For drama actress Joyce, Kathy Bates is the fan fave. People have her winning. But I have Bella Ramsey still in first for their performance in Last of Us, and nothing has changed.
I've always had Bella in first.
So Bella Ramsey, you wrote about this week, and I talked about it in one of my many Last of Us stories, is that she'd be the youngest actress to ever win this category, right? Like beyond, younger than Zendaya was.
Yeah, Zendaya was 24, and Bella would be 11 days shy of their 22nd birthday at the time of the ceremony.
And Kathy Bates has won Emmys before.
And Kathy Bates would be the oldest winner of the category at 77.
Would be the oldest winner and the first network winner since Viola Davis 10 years ago.
Another lawyer.
Which bias will lose? Which bias will win out? Will it be the bias against younger performers or the bias against network shows? I'm going to go with the bias against network shows. I think Bella Ramsey will win for their performance. So I have Bella in first, and then I have Kathy Bates, and then I have I begrudgingly have gone with the top 6 because I had Nicola Coughlan in here, as you'll recall, for many months. But I moved Melanie Linsky in, so the other nominees would be...
so you're just copying me.
Well, again. I'm copying the odds. You're copying the odds too. And I wasn't copying.
I've always had this. The odds
but this has always been the top 6.
That's not true.
Well, Bella Ramsey, Kathy Bates, Kerry Russell, Britt Lower, Elizabeth Moss, and Melanie Linsky.
Yeah, I mean, I've always had Bella in first just because they were probably second last time to Sarah Snook,
Correct. And I think they still have the stronger show than Matlock.
And yeah, obviously it's going to be stronger than Matlock. And then if you're talking about like the age bias, like the Emmys have nominated a lot of younger actors in recent years.
Yes.
Too. So I don't think like the age thing is a factor at all. With Kathy, like I can see her winning. I think it would depend on what other nominations Matlock could get. Like it'll be so cool if Sky P. Marshall could somehow make it in supporting.
People love Sky P. Marshall, Joyce.
She'd probably have a way better shot were it not for the White Lotus here. I don't know. It's interesting because you could say that Matlock is similar to the Pitt too, and how it's kind of redefining the classic procedural.
Let me ask you this. We didn't even mention this. What if Matlock gets that last drama series spot?
I don't know if like it's not as like zeitgeisty as the Pitt, like I think that's still one of its issues there. How to Get Away with Murder never got into series.
I know. I'm just saying. It feels like there's an open spot, so I feel like it is maybe possible.
It's like, like the last broadcast show to be nominated in drama series was This Is Us. And that you could see coming just because it was such a breakout.
Yes.
That first season. Whereas I think with Matlock, it's very much about Kathy.
Yeah. No, I know. I guess if the show gets nominated, I think I'd be more inclined to have her winning here. But
I mean, it would definitely help her cause, but she could win without the show being nominated for series.
Yes, of course. And that's what most people are predicting.
Maslany won without the show being nominated for series.
Most people are predicting that. For drama actor Joyce, I have Noah Wyle winning for the Pitt, which I know you do as well, probably, right, at this point?
Well, I haven't moved him up yet, but I can now. Like, I've always had Pedro in first, even knowing that, like, he was going to die this season. But I could move Noah up. Like, I would rather put Noah in first than the series in first right now, or, like, than have both right now, because I feel like that's too much pressure.
So I have Noah in first. I have Pedro in second. He's dropped to fourth in the odds after his death because I think people's like he's gone. But I will just say again, I think the enthusiasm for Pedro Pascal in the industry cannot be discounted. I think he is one of the most beloved actors.
He got 3 nominations last time.
He beat Kieran Culkin at the SAG Awards, which is different in a much bigger group and all that said.
But I think the fact that he won SAG shows that he's still competitive to win this.
And I really do think he could win this. That's a long way of saying I would not be surprised if he actually won Best Actor in a Drama at the Emmys, despite only appearing in like a handful of the season 2 episodes and dying off early in the season. That said, I think the enthusiasm for Noah Wyle is like, it's at the top levels to me. So I think he could win. We know he has the material. People really like him, maybe as much as they like Pedro, it seems.
Well, I think one thing he has that Pedro does not is just the history with TV viewers. Like, we've grown up with Noah Wyle and Carter. And that's one of the entry point into the Pitt is like, oh, Noah Wiley's back in an ER. It's not ER, but he's back in a hospital. And
legally, it's not ER. Yes, that's correct.
They're completely different shows. They're being sued, but they're completely different shows. No offense to the crime estate, but that's a great entry point. And I think the thing is that that's how you get the trust in viewers, and it is like comforting watching him be the Benton this time. He is the mentor to a bunch of Carters, and it like the thing like no one wants. Like, once you get into the Pit, like, no one is like disappointed it's not an ER revival. It's like you're just into the show itself, and then Robbie's a different character, but it's like that hook of like seeing him as a doctor again, and now older, wiser. It's a different character, and it just makes you feel comforted and nice and secure. And then the show was great too, and then he has the performance and the material. There's just, again, so much passion for the show that even if the show doesn't win, like, he can win,
That's kind of what I thought.
He's also a creative force behind it. He's written 2 episodes this season. He's going to direct next season.
And then I have Adam Scott in 3rd, Gary Oldman in 4th, Sterling K. Brown in 5th, and I'm hanging on John Hamm. I really love it. It's a great show. It's so good. It's having a tough time breaking through, I think, because of the visibility aspect of it, and like coming out now in the spring when there's a lot of shows, but I don't know. I'm like weighing on John in this show. He's so good. And like I've talked to people who've watched it or I try to get people to watch it, and they're all like, oh, he's so good. So no disrespect to Eddie Redmayne, who's 6 in the odds. I'm going to have John Hamm still.
I mean, I just have the top 6. But like, John Hamm would be cool. Again, like you said, it's the visibility. The show's been out for 2 weeks.
I'll say this. No. If I'm going to switch off anybody, I wouldn't go to Eddie. I would go to Diego Luna for Andor.
Because of the reviews.
The reviews are absolutely euphoric. I know the visibility isn't a problem, and I think he could easily fit into this group.
I know you're probably not the only person who's thinking he can get in based on the reviews, but it didn't get any acting nominations last time. I feel like that's not a show that the actors respond to in terms of acting.
True. I know that's an issue. So, but I'm just saying, like, I also think he's very well respected in the industry, and like, I do think that the visibility of the show helps his case. I'm not putting him in, but I think if I was going to drop John, I would over Eddie Redmayne, basically, because I don't think the visibility on David Jackal, even though it was such a hit for Sky and Peacock, is as strong now as maybe as these other shows.
I mean, it's just, if you have the 5, if you think the 5 above him are locked, it's just like, who's gonna get in otherwise? Like, right below him is Lee Jung Jae, former winner.
Right. Well, that's why I have John. That's why I have John, because I think the 5 are set. And then I was like, who are they going to go to? And we've seen they often default to previous nominees and winners. And Lee Jung Jae would qualify. He's no John Hamm. John Hamm has 18 Emmy nominations and a win. So I think it's just like, oh, I love John Hamm. I'll nominate him. He got 2 nominations last year.
Yeah, but they're also for more high-profile shows. So
true, but I think he's a host unto himself. That was.
I mean, I don't know if that's true, because like a lot of his nominations were concurrent when he was on Mad Men and 30 Rock. I love John Hamm, but it's just
let's do supporting. Let's do supporting, because I made some big changes.
How many White Lotus people did you drop?
I dropped 1 White Lotus person and 1 Last of Us person for now. So I have Carrie Coon and Parker Posey. I added Isabela Merced, and I put her in 3rd place. I have Amy Lou Wood for the White Lotus, Allison Janney, Natasha Rothwell, who I really do want to drop, and then Taylor Dearden for the Pitt, who was, I thought, just an absolute revelation on the show.
so into the pit. You've added more people than I have.
I have her in. I thought she was so great. Of all this, the tough thing I think for Taylor and all these supporting players is that they're all very good. And so you have to pick a fave, basically, right? Because you could easily have like Catherine Lanasa right here, or, Tracy Efeachor. How do you say her name, Joyce?
Efeachor.
I got that pretty close. That was good. High five.
Yeah, I think like Tracy's so good on the show, but she's MIA.
Yes.
In the last 4 episodes.
I went with Taylor because she just I found her performance so empathetic and just wonderful, and like that she is like a good Nepo baby, I think helps her cause.
All the Nepo babies on the show were good.
There are a lot of Nepo babies. I didn't mention Fiona Dourif, who I think is great as well. But Bryan Cranston, I think, is a great having Bryan Cranston in your quarter cannot hurt, and she's fantastic on the show on her own. Because I just think she's so great, and she made me cry more than any of the other supporting actresses. So that's why I put her in for my category.
I talked to Taylor this week, and we talked about one of her saddest scenes that I'm sure you cried at, when Amber, the little girl, the drowning victim, died. Ugh. And then she has to break the news to her little sister Bella, and she uses the bear.
Wept. Like weeping at this scene. It's an incredible performance. I think she could get in. If I was going to drop Natasha Rothwell, I would probably put Kaitlyn Dever back in. I dropped Kaitlyn Dever because I'm expecting her to end up going guest. I just don't know. But I understand what you're saying in terms of like, it would be a flex to go supporting, and then next year she could be here as well.
Well, it's also like strategy, because if you're thinking from like the HBO perspective, they already have a bunch of contenders here for the White Lotus too.
And then Kaitlyn's biggest competition for guest acting win would be Catherine O'Hara from the same show, I feel like, for Last of Us, because she's also great in it. So anyway, that's what I have in terms of my picks. I have Carrie Coon still winning because I feel like she was still so great on the show. But maybe Isabela Merced could win. Who knows? I don't know.
So I've had Kaitlyn in first, so I could drop her and expect her to go guest. But then who do I put in first?
Carrie Coon.
Like, do I want to put, like, everyone has Carrie Coon. Do I want to put Carrie Coon in first?
I just see no reason why. Like, part of me is like, there's no reason why she will win. Like, it feels like everyone loves Carrie Coon, right? Like, and
I mean, the internet loves Carrie Coon,
but I think the industry loves Carrie Coon too. And I think that like, there's really no reason for her not to win. She arguably won't have a better shot to win, and she had the material this season, and I just think that's enough to put her in. But like, I dropped like Leslie Bibb here, obviously, who I was really confident in.
If I don't drop Kaitlyn yet, I do need to drop someone to get Isabella in.
I absolutely think you need to get Isabella in.
I know, but like, I have to drop someone else if I don't drop Kaitlyn.
So do you still have Leslie Bibb?
Yeah, like I've made no changes.
Okay.
So, I mean, I could drop Leslie. Like I would drop a White Lotus person. I could drop Allison Janney. I keep my White Lotuses.
I just feel like Allison Janney will get in because she's Allison Janney.
Okay, I'll drop Leslie and get Isabella. Where is she?
Now, that's a shame because Leslie's great. I did the same thing. I really love Leslie Bibb on this show, and I think she could get in for sure. And maybe we'll go back to her and drop Natasha, but for now.
What if the White Lotus actually underperforms? Like, we're all expecting.
Well, I'm thinking it might based on the next category, which we'll get to, I guess, as well. But I do think it could.
Yeah, like we're expecting the usual flood, but I think the field is actually very competitive. I have 2 Last of Us this year because I'm going to keep Kaitlyn for now.
Nice.
I'm just going to keep her until she officially moves.
That's fine.
I don't have any severances. You don't have any severances either.
I don't have. I think if it added 8, I would probably add Patricia Arquette, but I'm not really confident in that. I think the most likely would be Deachin Lackman. If I added an 8th, I would maybe go with her. Again, because I just think she was like the emotional core of the season at times. And I think people really responded to that performance. And if they love Severance, which it seems like they do, she would probably get in over Patricia. Despite Patricia Arquette's obviously history with the Emmys.
Yeah. I mean, if we have an 8th, I would probably be biased and hope Dick's a Pitt actress.
So you don't have any Pitt actors?
I don't have any Pitts.
I'm going to stick with Taylor. And I'm putting Dick in too. So I have Taylor and Deachin Lackman and Isabela Merced. Sure. And then I have Carrie Coon, Parker Posey, and Amy Lou Wood. So those are my 3 White Lotuses. which feels right.
Taylor's still at 100 to 1. I should grab her at 100 to 1.
I'm telling you.
Catherine's at 92.
Catherine's great, but I just was like, again, I'm going with like the emotional impact. That's how I was like picking on. I think they will respond to that more.
I could totally pull you and pick her because I talked to her.
You should.
But then I have to drop someone else.
Well, speaking of people you talk, let's go to supporting actor, Joyce, before we wrap up here. You talked to Patrick Ball as well.
I did.
Pitt.
He was great.
You know who I added? My prediction?
You already told me that. Yeah.
Fuck yeah. Put him in. I have him at 100 to 1. He doesn't even have a photo in the prediction center.
Because this is his first TV show. His only other IMDb credit is a Law and Order guest spot.
But I absolutely think, again, if you like this show and you're watching the show, which I think people will, and they have, and they're obsessed with the show, he is a standout character, and he goes through a real emotional trauma, personal stuff that I think is really rewarding. And he has the most of his scenes with Noah Wiley, who is going to probably win. So I think he could be honestly just a coattail on that alone. And there feels like there's room here because I dropped Patrick Schwarzenegger for White Lotus because I just felt like there was a time during the season when it seemed like he was going to really assert himself as like a breakout, and he was great on the show, but I think he was not in as much as like, I guess the comp for him would be someone like Megan Fahey from the second season, right? Where it's like, oh, before the season, you would have never guessed Megan Fahey is going to get an Emmy nomination. And then by the end, she has these great arc and this really emotional scene in the finale. They tried to replicate that with Patrick when he like does that forlorn look at Amy Lou Wood and Walton Goggins, but I don't think it landed as strongly. I just don't, it's not his fault. I just don't think it was the character just wasn't as used as much as Megan Fahey's was. So I dropped him. And I dropped Jeffrey Wright because I just felt like, again, I think he's going to be guest eligible and probably will want to run as a guest actor. Maybe not. I don't know. So I have Walton Goggins, Sam Rockwell, John Turturro, Jag Loudon, Tremel Tillman, Jason Isaacs, and Patrick Ball.
You stopped at Patrick for a Patrick.
Yes.
I mean, I think I know what you're saying about Patrick, but I think like the response to that scene in the finale was, positive for him. And I think just based on, like Jake Lacey got in and like Theo James got in, like he's in that same, like that character's in that same realm.
100%.
So I can still see him getting in because I also think there's like a, like a quote surprise factor with him. It's like, oh, he's actually a good actor. Like,
yeah, for sure.
I'm actually thinking about dropping Sam Rockwell.
Interesting.
His big scene was the monologue, right? And like, sure, great. But then like he was just in the subsequent episodes and not really like he didn't need to be there. And then there was like nothing else.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean,
like
again, I think that makes sense for sure. I thought he was great in those episodes. He's really great. Yeah, but he doesn't have I understand what you're saying. He doesn't have like a lot to do. He doesn't need to be there.
Yeah, and like it's like the only reason he's here is because he maxed out of guest, So whereas I think he would be a shoo-in for guest because obviously his submission would be 5 with the monologue, and like he's just here because he can't be a guest. And I think we all added him after that episode, right? But then like the rest of the season happened, and then like nothing else he did lived up to that, and it didn't need to. But then he also just didn't have material. Like he was just. Why did he need to accompany Walton?
Just to be awesome, I think.
Like, I know you're friends in real life, but
just to be awesome. I don't disagree there. I guess what you're saying. Maybe I'll drop him eventually. But I think the monologue is strong enough that he could just get in. I think that's one of those situations where nobody's going to put a lot of thought. Like when they're filling out their ballots, they're going to be like, Sam Rockwell for sure. He was great. They're not going to think too deeply about it because the monologue was like, one of the standout moments of the entire TV season, I feel like, in the way it was responded to. And probably the best part of the whole show.
I kind of wonder if he's just, one of those people that like we're all predicting who just doesn't get in for some reason.
Wouldn't be the first time that happens.
Like Tom Hollander,
Yep. No, I get it. It makes sense. I
know. I guess you could also like kind of say the same for Jason Isaacs too, because
so I thought that a lot also, but I'm surprised at how sticky his performance has been. And
I think a lot of that's also like his press tour. And then like he's such a drama queen
He
diva.
is, and I think people like
I
that.
love it. That's complimentary.
Yeah,
But
and I think, like, I don't know, I was surprised at how sticky his performance was. I think people really did, like, find him, like, I think he's more like, Patrick Schwarzenegger is definitely more like Jake Lacy and Theo James, but I think in the show, the Jason Isaacs character is more like Jake Lacy and Theo James in the way he was used, and that's why I think he's, like, probably safe, and I would put him above Patrick. I don't know. I'm like, it's all, like, who knows, but, like, I could see Sam missing. If I drop Sam, I guess I would go with Patrick to put in another White Lotus person. I don't think I would drop Patrick Ball yet. I think they're going to get him. I just think the show is going to be so big. I don't understand why it wouldn't be. Maybe this is my Pitt colored glasses on, but I do think it could be good. The other,
this is what you do. You're so reactionary right after you.
I love being reactionary. With reason. The other person I thought of, again, it depends on how the season turns out, but young Mazzino I thought is, like, really good on The Last of Us, and probably.
I know. I was just gonna say, like, no Last of Us people for you.
No, I thought he was really good on the show. He got nominated for Beef, obviously, which is really cool. So Emmy voters know him, even if he was part of, like, the Beef phenomenon, more so than just, like, an individual performance. But he's really good on the show, and if they're gaga for Last of Us, like, he's definitely a person I would put in over Jeffrey Wright, just based on the length of time he's in the show.
Yeah, like, I think if, again, White Lotus problem, like, if White Lotus weren't here, I think a lot of us would have, like, him or, like, Gabriel Luna. Or I don't know, it's just because, like, you know, Last of Us did not have supporting people this time, so you're not really considering them.
I think as the season goes on, these people will move up. I don't think, to me, like, Isabela Merced, I feel like is absolutely getting in, but the others I could see either going either way. You know what I mean? Like, in terms of, well, and I think if Kaitlyn Dever runs in supporting, she will also get in. But, like, I'm not going to predict, like, even if Jeffrey was, I don't know. I just don't think they would probably get in, but who knows? I
mean, yeah, I never had Jeffrey in here because I just kind of assumed he would be guests anyway. Yeah, like, I mean, with the Pitt supporting actors, like, they would definitely have an easier time getting a guy in, just because they basically just have two with Patrick and Garen Howell. And yeah, obviously Patrick has more material and, like, the meteor scenes and the meteor storyline with the substance abuse and getting fired. Like, he also has, like, two great scenes in the finale with Catherine in the break room, and he's, like, asking for help, and then obviously the confrontation with Noah in the bay.
And, like, addiction stuff storylines are, like, really obviously relatable, and, like, for a lot of people, and, like, kind of really speak. I think that people really do respond to those type of stories in shows.
Yeah, and then also, like, as we now know, season 2 is going to pick up on Langdon's first day back at work. So it's just like, it's like, I think, you know, regardless of what happens to the supporting cast this season, I think they would get in next year when the fields clear out.
I think that's fair. Joyce, we should wrap up here. Email us at slugfest@goldderby.com. We'll do a mailbag episode soon. And we'll be back next week with probably not more Last of Us in the Pit. Maybe we'll go through hacks in the comedy categories, do a refresh on those.
I think maybe another week for hacks would be better too.
That's a good tease, Joyce. All right, we'll talk to you then. Bye. Thanks for listening to Awards Magnet, a Gold Derby podcast. Like what you heard? Leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Awards Magnet is produced by Andrew Merrill. Our logo is designed by Chelsea Sikora. Please like and subscribe to stay on top of all the awards news, and email us at slugfests@goldderby.com.